Liv gets an assignment to photograph the Chang family's annual holiday party alongside a new college. However, she tries to hide the fact that she's a part of the Chang family, which only results in some drama. In the opening scene, we're taken through San Francisco during the holiday season, and we see some of the great monuments, including the big Christmas tree. After hanging up a picture of it on her wall, Liv turns around to look at her simply decorated living room before snapping a picture for her beloved followers. While Christmas at her house is done minimalistically, her parents go all out for the Christmas party, and that's what they're famous for. Walking into her parents' house, she scans the room before telling her mother that they've gone overboard and should probably stop buying new ornaments every year. Her mother disagrees, claiming that the more decorations the better. Liv mentions that the unnecessary decorations could be a fire hazard when her mother remembers to show her the new fireplace. She walks in, clearly upset about the special dish for the party. He explains that he's struggling to pick and choose, but they're sure that he'll make a great choice. Liv complains to her father as well about the obnoxiousness they bring to Christmas, claiming that it should only be a small party for their family, and that the whole neighborhood doesn't need to be involved. Her mother takes offense, telling her that she should be happy the whole neighborhood wants to join the parties. Regardless, her father heads back to the kitchen, and her mother asks whether she's bringing anyone to the party. Liv claims that it's the season of independence, but her mother reminds her that she hasn't brought even a friend in many years. It is the party's 25th anniversary, so Ivy wants to make it as special as possible, but Liv asks her not to talk about her dating life. On her way to work, Liv snaps a couple of pictures of things she considers beautiful. Even at work, as she's getting coffee, she notices an unfamiliar face lurking around the office, so she decides to take a photo of him. The stranger notices her, and she explains that she likes taking pictures of beautiful things. He laughs, and after realizing that she'd called him beautiful, she gets embarrassed. The guy introduces himself as Henry, and once he asks for the picture, she assumes that he's only trying to get her number. However, he assures her that he could think of more clever ways to get in contact with her, and just wants the picture. She hands him the phone when the boss walks out of his office to greet Henry. He informs Liv that he's from the Post, and before they go to his office, Henry lets her know that it was nice meeting her. In the office, the boss explains to Henry that they work at a fast pace and usually get on with big stories. Confident in himself, Andrew assures him that it won't be a problem for him, so they start on the assignments right away. After work, Liv meets up with her brother Andrew, and right as they're about to walk into the cafe, she spots Henry. Her gaze follows him, and Andrew notices her staring. So he asks about the guy, and she tells him that he's the new colleague at her work. Completely unhinged, Andrew calls out to Henry despite not knowing him, and Henry smiles as he finally sees someone he knows. After approaching them, he reveals that he's trying to find a restaurant since they're doing a story on the holiday menu for a Christmas edition of the paper. Andrew's eyes brighten as he remembers their parties that could potentially be good for a story, but before he can reveal anything, Liv nudges him so he would stay quiet. Henry leaves, so Andrew takes the chance to ask why she had hit him. She explains that no one at work knows that she's Chang, and she would love to if it stayed that way. Despite not agreeing, Andrew promises to keep his mouth shut. In the evening, Liv gets an unexpected visit from her mother. She scolds her for not calling or texting when Andrew walks in dragging a big Christmas tree with him. Liv is visibly upset, but Ivy promises to take back whatever she doesn't like. Before they get to decorating, Andrew excuses himself, revealing that he's going to dinner with Henry, catching them off guard. Liv makes sure he remembers not to mention that she's a Chang, but Ivy wonders whether Henry is a good bachelor for Liv. Just because there's a new guy in town, it doesn't have to mean that Liv's dating him, and she assures her mother of that. Luckily, Ivy drops the conversation, and they head to the living room to decorate the tree. After putting Liv's golden ornaments on, Ivy asks where the rest are. She gets disappointed once Liv tells her that's all they're using, and wonders what has happened since Liv used to love using different colors. Tastes change and people grow is what Liv says before asking for the star. After putting the golden star on top of the tree, Liv asks for her mother's opinion, and she lets her know that it's boring but cute. The following day, Liv gets called to her boss's office, only to be handled an assignment alongside Henry. Once she hears that it's about the annual party, Chang's annual party, she tries to change her boss's mind, claiming that they could aim bigger than a story about a local party. Her boss gets confused, as he had thought that the story would be perfect for her since she talks about the magic of Christmas often. Once he mentions making it a front-page story, a great opportunity for both her and Henry, her eyes widen. Not wanting to miss the great opportunity, Liv agrees, despite not knowing how she'll remain unknown as a Chang. Right as the meeting finishes, she rushes to the bathroom to call Andrew. Once he answers, she starts scolding him for revealing the only thing he was told to keep a secret. But he lets her know that she wasn't even mentioned. Choosing to believe him, she promises to destroy him if she finds out that he had a say in the article being made. Not sure what would be the smartest move, she settles on distancing herself from the family as much as possible while the article is being made. Later in the afternoon, we see the new co-workers at a coffee shop. Henry spots the ad for boba tea, and it immediately takes him back home. Liv reveals that she's never had the drink, so he decides to treat her to it. Given that she doesn't know anything about him, Liv decides to ask about his family and his South African accent. He's impressed by her knowledge of accents, so he reveals that he had traveled back and forth from Bangkok to South Africa his whole childhood. Wanting to know something about her as well, he asks about her passion for photography, and she tells him that she loves capturing the beauty in everything, even the simplest things. He agrees with her, claiming that there's even a story in everything when it comes to writing. Their boba gets made, so they sit down by a window. Liv wastes no time in trying the unusual drink, and she ends up loving it. Taking out his phone, Henry snaps a selfie with the drink, and Liv finds it funny. He recommends she does it as well because all she does is post pictures of others. She realizes that he had looked her up online, so she calls him out for it, and they laugh. Finally, they decide to stop joking around and get to work immediately. However, Henry suggests they go to Chang's to conduct the interview. Having no other choice, she agrees, but suggests they make a pit stop before going to their house. As they make their way to the pit stop, he asks how significant the pit stop is to the Chang pastries. Liv reveals that the most characteristic part of a party's is the decorations, and the woman behind them all is Mrs. Lin. Before they get to her store, she tells him that Mrs. Lin's English is not good, so she'll be speaking in Cantonese. Henry notices that she's very informed for someone who claims to not be a big fan of the party, but she brushes it off as something that all the locals know. They get to the store and Liv tells Henry to look around so she can tell Mrs. Lin about her plan. Mrs. Lin is surprised to hear Liv speak in Cantonese, so Liv lies that she's trying to teach Henry Cantonese. Lin cringes at her words because she knows Liv is not good at speaking the language, so Liv decides to come clean about her being a Chang. Despite thinking that it's ridiculous, Mrs. Lin tries to stick to the plan. They go through the decorations in the store, but as they get to the back, Mrs. Lin gets tired of speaking Cantonese. Liv tries to convince her to continue, but Mrs. Lin ends up telling Henry in English that he should visit the Changs. Before she has the opportunity to reveal that Liv is their daughter, she cuts her off and lies about her being their neighbor. Not wanting to risk her secret anymore, Liv suggests Mrs. Lin sends her the details through the mail before running back to the front of the store. Taking the chance as Liv flees, Henry reveals that he knows Cantonese. And not only that, he figures that Liv is a part of the Chang family, given her last name. As they're in the back unpacking the truck, Liv calls her brother so he can get their parents out of the house. Shortly, we see the duo at the Chang's house, but as they knock, no one seems to answer. Not wanting to wait any longer, Liv suggests she show him her favorite spot to visit during the holidays, and after some hesitation, he agrees. They go to the local bridge, and he gets confused as to why she would be visiting the bridge during the holidays. She lets him know that she usually comes during the evening when the whole city is lit up in Christmas lights. However, despite looking amazing, she admits to feeling like it can sometimes overshadow the true meaning of Christmas. He mentions the Chang party, and she finally decides to come clean. Unfortunately, the boat arrives just as she's about to reveal that she's a Chang, stopping her from being honest with him. As they finish their boat trip, she apologizes for not being able to see the changes, but he assures her that he had an incredible day. Returning home, Liv is met with a horrifying sight. She sees her family adding bright and colorful decorations all over her apartment. During her breakdown, the bell rings, and her father goes to see who it is. To their surprise, Henry walks into the room to return a camera to Liv. When he sees her surrounded by the Changs, she promises to explain, and that's why we see them seated in the living room, having a serious conversation. Liv apologizes for her lies, claiming that she wanted to keep her professional and personal life apart. Henry accepts her apology, and they settle on making the official interview the following day. As everyone leaves, Liv pulls Andrew aside to scold him for bringing them to her house, but he pokes fun at her, claiming that he didn't know Andrew would walk her back after their romantic boat ride. She gets annoyed at his comments, but as he leaves, she makes sure to tell him that she loves him. The following morning, we see Liv and Henry make their way to the Changs. Again, she apologizes and promises not to lie any further, and he accepts, wanting the obstacle to be set aside. Finally, they get in front of the house, And looking at all the decorations, Henry admits that he could never get over them, but she lets him know that there's more inside. They ring the door and the Changs let them in. Walking into the kitchen, Andrew hands them aprons so they can get their hands dirty. Looking at the silly print on the apron, Liv can't help but laugh as she sees the smug on her brother's face. Before they get started with the cooking, Henry thanks them for welcoming him into their home and for letting him spend Christmas with them. He lets them know that he loves the fusion of cultures they've done in their home. So Liv's dad chimes in to inform them that the dish they'll be making is also a fusion of different cuisines. Andrew comments on his dad's unusual but delicious recipes from the previous years, and Liv chimes in to let Henry know about the dishes he's talking about. Ivy asks them to stop yapping, but start rolling out dumplings. So we see the changes with Henry preparing the delicious dumpling. Halfway done, Ivy notices Liv's bad-looking dumplings, so she calls her out on how ugly they are. Knowing that she won't stop talking about them, Liv suggests she stays off the cooking and gets on camera duties. Henry even suggests taking a picture with her in the shot, but she reminds him that she's the one that always stays behind the camera. After having fun in the kitchen, the family moves to the living room as Jack prepares some hot chocolate. Once Henry tries the hot chocolate, he understands Liv's obsession with them. Opening up a photo album, Ivy shows him the picture of their first party 25 years ago, where it had been just them with Mrs. Lynn. Seeing Mrs. Lynn reminds Ivy of the decorations they used to take from other occasions and the fact that it had been Liv's idea. With a smirk, she tells Henry that she's very smart, but also adds that she's very single. Liv's eyes widen as she hears her mother say that, so she apologizes to Henry while asking Ivy not to say anything else. He assures him that it's fine since he's sure his mother would have done the same to him. They come across a picture of a rather moody Liv, so Jack reveals that the picture is around the period Liv started to dislike their parties. Standing up, Jack hugs his children before revealing that Liv had sung at every Christmas party up until that Christmas. Everyone laughs, so Henry takes the chance to express his gratitude for letting him become a part of the family during the holidays and asks whether there's something else he can do to help. Given that it will get them to spend some time together, Ivy suggests he and Liv send out the invites for the party. Jack protests, but once she gives him the look, he understands her intentions. So, in the morning, Liv and Henry knock on doors throughout the neighborhood, delivering the party invitations. Henry comments on how there are many invitations, so Liv lets him know that they get sent back with money and personal messages that end up on a tree only to be won by whoever gets picked. A neighbor calls out Liv's name, happy to see her. Liv greets her while handing her an invitation, and the neighbor asks about her dad's dish. She doesn't reveal anything as her lips are shut, but the neighbor understands. Henry thinks it's nice that everyone knows her in a big city, but Liv admits that she doesn't like it, as it can feel invasive at times. Despite her explanation, he still doesn't understand why she doesn't want to be associated with the party, so she reminds him that he's telling a story about the party and not about her personal life. Before they have a chance to go along, they get stopped by carol singers who perform for them, bringing smiles to their faces. After delivering the cards, they go to Mrs. Lynn's store for Henry to buy something for the Changs. Walking along Chinatown, Henry decides to share a fun fact with her, and it is that all Chinatowns look similar to the one where they're at because of the reconstruction after the earthquake in the 1900s. Surprised by his knowledge, she lets him know that she wasn't aware, but because he's talking about Chinese significance, she decides to take him somewhere similar to the Chinese culture and her childhood. She takes him to the oldest cathedral in California, where her grandparents had leaner English, and where she attended Saturday Chinese school. Entering the church, they're welcomed by a lady who reminds them to light a candle and say a prayer. And that's exactly what they do. But as they close their eyes to say a prayer, they keep opening them to check on each other. Nervously, she asks him why he's looking at her, and he lets her know that he's just grateful to have shared a prayer with her, and she thanks him as well for teaching her new things about her city. They visit the market next as Ivy invites Henry for dinner. Laughing together, they watch Ivy joke around with the salespeople when Henry gets a call from the next interviewee. The person they interview next reveals that the donations had essentially been Liv's idea. Henry is impressed and tries to find out more details about it, but yet again, she reminds him that she doesn't want to be a part of the story. Even when they come back to the office, he explains that she might be the detail they're missing to get a perfect story, but she disagrees. Regardless, they agree to have a celebration in the evening, and so we see them at the bar. After toasting to their project, Liv decides to ask him about his family, given that he never talks about them. Smiling to himself, he reveals that he has 5 siblings, so the Christmases have always been chaotic. Hearing the melody, he invites Liv to a dance, and they head to the middle of the restaurant. The singer performs Deck the Halls, And while no one wants to join, when he hands Liv the microphone, she kills it with the vocals. Everyone is in awe and is very impressed, but she ends up feeling embarrassed, which is why she asks to leave. He suggests they take a stroll before he walks her back home, and she agrees. Walking back, he thanks her for the incredible night, and she thanks him for pulling her out of her comfort zone. He opens up to her about being fearful that he may not be accepted as a writer in her firm, but she's sure that he'll get the job. As they get to the entrance, she lets him know that he's an incredible human being and that anyone can see that, even their boss. They stand inches apart, eyes locked on each other when they start leaning in. All of a sudden, they notice a mistletoe that catches them off guard and completely ruins their chance to kiss. Wishing each other goodnight, she enters the building without getting her kiss. The following morning, he gets to work after her and hands her a mistletoe himself. However, their positive energy gets ruined as their boss calls them into his office. He admits that the story is good, but knows that a part of it is being left out. Feeling guilty, Liv decides to come clean about being a Chang, but it doesn't end up in the way she had expected it to. They walk out of the office disappointed, but Henry reminds her that she's still on the project and that it isn't over yet. A message notification distracts her, and it's her mother reminding her to pick up the envelopes. Instead of going alone, Henry suggests he goes with her to get a better insight into the process of the party planning. They get the last envelope, but instead of walking back to the house, Henry suggests they get on a cable car. So we see them, or rather Liv, sitting embarrassed as Henry hangs himself from the cable car. Even the driver asks him to sit down, but he encourages Liv to join him. As she hangs on the side having the time of her life, the red bag ends up falling off the cable car and no one notices it. The driver tells them to get off at the next stop, and that's when she notices that the red bag isn't on her. They search for it all around town until the evening, but they don't see it anywhere. Returning to the house, Liv comes clean only to be yelled at by her whole family. Ivy lets her know that she only wants her to be a part of the party again, but doesn't realize that even such a small task would be too much responsibility for her. With tears in her eyes, Liv asks them why they always try to get her to be a part of the party when she clearly doesn't want to. They go back and forth until eventually, Liv admits to being embarrassed by the party and their obnoxiousness. The family takes great offense, and while Liv tries to explain her words, Ivy lets her know that she and Jack will handle everything and asks her not to come to the party in the end. The following morning, Henry decides to call Liv to get her back on the project, only to be asked to continue alone. Liv lets him know that she can't jump back to the story after the events from the previous night, and he understands. That is why he goes to the Changs himself to finish what he had started. Jack and Ivy thank him for coming back to finish the story, and he assures them that it's still front page worthy. Setting up the camera, he presses the record so Ivy starts filling the goodie bags with some special sweets. She gets to the fortune cookies, and the sadness can be heard in her voice. The cookies were made by Liv, and even though she's not really festive, she still helps around and makes sure to be present. Even when they're mad, they still like to show appreciation for their daughter. In the evening, Liv decides to take a stroll and finds herself in front of the cathedral. Knowing that her prayer will be answered, she goes into the church and sits on the benches. The older lady working there approaches her to say hello. Liv is surprised, but the woman assures her that she remembers her because of the handsome man she had walked in with the other day. Taking in her kind energy, Liv opens up to the lady despite not knowing her at all. Luckily, the woman knows what party she's talking about and understands her concerns about losing the money and calling her parents embarrassing. However, in every darkness, there is a light, and the lady makes sure that Liv leaves the darkness and exits the church with the light in her. Taking a candle, she lights it up and motions for Liv to do the same. Looking at her teary-eyed, Liv calls her an angel, but the lady lets her know that she's nothing but a neighbor up for a chat any time of the day. Liv lights up a candle and takes a deep breath before leaving the church. Back at home, she receives a video message from Henry, and it is of her family packing the goodie bags. Despite being bad at her, the way they talk about her and how appreciative they are of her brings tears to her eyes. She knows that she's loved and that she's spent many years thinking only of herself when she had forgotten what it's like to bond with her family over Christmas. The following day, she pulls herself together and heads to the office. Henry is surprised to see her there, but she thanks him for sending the video. There's only one thing she can do, and that is to be truthful so Henry can finish his story. So, to get back the donations, she decides to call up an expert for help. As they stand by the bay, Henry sees Andrew coming towards them, but struggles to understand how he's the expert. As they get together, Liv explains to them that she had started distancing herself from the party once she had been bullied by her classmates. A video of her singing in Chinese had been spread out in school, And instead of appreciating the language, the children had made fun of her accent. After many years of letting them win, Liv has finally decided to stop hiding in the shadows and be proud of who she is and her culture. Andrew smiles and advises her not to listen to the haters, as she has her family to protect her at all times. Taking Henry's hand, she thanks him for being there for her, as well as her brother. Taking a deep breath, she hands the phone to Henry, who goes live for her audience. Finally, Liv lets the audience know that she's Chang and asks for their help. The time for the long-awaited party finally comes, as we see people from all over the city there. While Andrew seems to be chill, Ivy notices the money tree and starts freaking out. He asks her to calm down, and luckily Jack helps, but she knows that she'll have to go on the stage any minute and reveal the horrible news. Inside the party is where the magic lies. From all sorts of decorations to all sorts of foods, the party is the true representative of Asian fusion. However, as great as everything looks, it comes time for the chance to come clean. Jack and Ivy get everyone's attention, but little do they know that Liv has sneaked into the party. Ivy is about to take responsibility for the lost money when Liv chimes in, letting the crowd know that she has lost the money. Everybody stares at one another, confused, as Liv gets on stage. Firstly, she apologizes to everyone for the money, but what she apologizes the most for is misunderstanding the true meaning of her parents' party. With the help of a new friend, Henry, and a lovely neighbor, Liv admits to finally knowing what the party is about. Their Christmas party is about love, support, and acceptance, way deeper than just a slightly obnoxious party. Finally, she lets them know that she has raised the money back with the help of her followers when a girl pushes through the crows, only to let Liv know that she has found the money bag. Shocked, Liv asks for her name, and the girl is revealed to be named Nora. The crowd cheers for Nora as they realize that they have doubled the donations and more to help their community. Not only that, Liv calls out for another surprise before getting up on the stage. She takes off her coat before revealing a beautiful red traditional dress. Grabbing the mic, she starts singing the Christmas song she used to sing as a child in Chinese. The people stare in awe as pride and joy can be noticed in their eyes. When it comes to Jack, however, he is brought to tears as his daughter reminds him of when she was just a little girl. She finishes the song and runs into her parents' embrace. Apologizing for being so selfish throughout the years, she promises to listen to them and take their advice. They're happy their little girl is ABC and is finally a part of the Chang-tastic party extravaganza. Looking to the side, she sees Henry, and with the approval of her parents, she goes over to him. She tells him that they make a great team, and he agrees. However, he asks to be friends as well, but she lets him know that she doesn't want to be his friend as she pulls him to her, and they share their first kiss. On the morning of Christmas, we see them next to the Christmas trees together when she pulls out a box and hands it to him as a present. Opening it up, he starts smiling as he pulls out a mistletoe. Bringing it above their heads, they share a lovely kiss before Ivy pokes her head through the door. The family joins together on Christmas morning, one of many that for sure will be Chang-tastic.